Well, I just thought I'd tell you where I'm up to with the Archtop mandolin. I'm in the middle of French polishing it, and as you can see, or hopefully you can see, the French polish really enhances the grain enormously. And of course, being such a thin finish, it doesn't affect the vibrations of the instrument. It doesn't have a dampening effect. So I don't intend taking you right the way through the French polishing process. I just really want to give you a flavour of what's involved. So a few weeks ago, before I actually set up the instrument in the white, I filled the grain of the Brazilian rosewood. The Brazilian rosewood is an open grain wood, so it's got quite large pores, and if you don't fill those with a filler of some description, then you've got to fill it with the polish, and that's just going to take forever trying to fill it with polish. You've got to kind of bulk it out with something else. The maple and the spruce, they're closed grain woods, so they don't need filling, so they actually finish quite quickly. So I'll show you a little bit of video that I did say a couple of weeks ago when I filled the grain. I actually filled the grain on this one with Zap epoxy for the first time. Normally I use pumice powder, but I thought I'd try the epoxy method of doing it, and I must admit it's turned out really well. So here's that bit of video now. So what my intentions are today is to give this a light sand with some 800 wet or dry paper. Always use really fine paper. If you don't, what you're then doing is you're trying to fill up the scratches that the abrasive paper has made with French polish. So although it's tedious, sanding it with fine paper, it saves time later on trying to polish it. So I'm going to rub the whole thing down with the 800 paper first of all. So this is what we're talking about, a light sand. And also when you're sanding it like this, as you're doing it and you're concentrating and you're looking at the surface, it's highlighting any flaws, if there are any areas that you may need to concentrate on. So once I've sanded it with the wet or dry, I then use one of these abrasive pads, go over the whole thing with an abrasive pad. It's 2000 grit and it's really fine, and it almost buffs the surface up, but it helps get rid of any scratches and prepare for the next coat of polish. French polish is reversible, so what I mean by that is the polish that I put on top of this, the coat that I put on top of this, will dissolve what's already on there and it will bond to it. So the fact that this surface is shiny and smooth isn't an issue. If you were using some lacquers which aren't reversible, i.e. they dry via some kind of chemical reaction, then you might need to leave the surface a little bit rougher, so it's a key for the next coat to grip. But with French polish that isn't the case. So that's one side done, so now I work all the way around the instrument, doing a section at a time. So the whole of the instrument's been cut back, say using the wet or dry and the abrasive pads, and I'm now going to start applying some polish. And what I've got is this little pad piece of old white t-shirt material, some cotton waste, and you put the polish onto the waste, and I like to use a syringe for that, so you've got some kind of measure of control. If it's too wet, just give it a little bit of a dab, because ain't the secret of French polishing, it's a real kind of less is more. Build it up in thin layers. Don't try to put too much on in one hit, otherwise it then will get very sticky. By putting it on very thinly, it dries almost instantaneously, so you can keep going over it and building up this layer of shellac based polish. So the plan is to kind of polish the back, and when I say the back, of the back surface of the neck, then the head, and one of the sides, and then that's done in the morning, and then after lunch it's dry enough to turn over and do the front and the other side. Once you've been polishing for a while, and I can only say a while, I mean, all of this is very vague. It's all about the feel for the materials and practice and knowing how far you can work these materials. But once you got to a certain stage, you'll find that the pad starts to feel a little bit sticky, and at that stage I put a little bit of oil on the pad, and when I say oil I mean vegetable oil, just a tiny little bit on the syringe, a tiniest little daub on the end there. Hardly see it, but that's just enough to stop the pad from sticking, and they say that's just vegetable oil. Right, well, suitably refreshed after having lunch. The back is touch dry, as is this side, so what I can do now is turn it over, work on the front and work on this side and the top surface, or I should say the front surface of the head, and off we go again. So this process of sanding, applying polish, as I say, I don't know how long it takes. It just takes as long as it takes, because the French polish kind of dictates to you. You know, it's kind of ready when it's ready. So I'm hoping that I'll probably only have to do this another 4 or 5 times. Okay, so we're at the end of the day really, and I've got some polish on all of the instrument. So what I'm going to do now is, just with some methylated spirits or alcohol if you're the other side of the pond, wipe the instrument down. That'll pick up any of the residue oil, take off any little sticky bits of dust or bits of fabric from the pad. Gives it a bit of a shine as well. Not that that really matters at this stage, because it's all going to be sanded again tomorrow. So here we are, a week or so on, and during that time that cycle of cutting back, polishing has been going on. The only difference being that I've been using finer grades of abrasive and slightly diluting the French polish. But as you can see, she is looking very, very good at the moment. So I'm going to hang the mandolin up in the workshop. It will have a good 2-3 weeks for the polish to harden off. I can then assemble it, get it playing, and hopefully in a month or so's time I'll be offering this for sale on my website. So thanks for taking the time to watch this, and see you in the next episode. Cheers.